Why did Melissa Gilbert choose to remain mute all these years concerning Dean Butler, and why is she eventually choosing to speak now? Due to what she has just disclosed was entirely unforeseen. Not her long-standing admirers, nor certainly those who believed in the ideal love narrative of Laura and Almanzo. Was Dean the true passion of her life? Was their rapport genuine, or was it merely performative? And what has Melissa been withholding for numerous decades? Remain until the conclusion, as once you hear what she ultimately disclosed, you may never reconsider that renowned television romance from a fresh perspective. The performance and the romance that everyone trusted. If you were raised viewing Little House on the Prairie, you are certainly familiar with Melissa Gilbert. Most individuals recall her for her on-screen romantic relationship with Dean Butler. Indeed, let us be candid, this role alone was sufficient to render her truly unforgettable. People were unable to cease discussing the exceptional quality of the performance. Little House on the Prairie was about the Ingalls family, who resided in a modest wooden home situated in the rural countryside. They did not possess substantial wealth, but they had one another, and that rendered them wealthy in a different sense. However, their lives were not always without difficulty. Occasionally, disasters, illnesses, or hardships occurred. Winters. However, they persisted unwaveringly. They assisted one another, looked after their companions, and consistently sought to act in accordance with what was correct. At the core of the narrative was Laura Ingalls, a young child with a generous spirit and considerable inquiry. She lacked luxurious trinkets or a phone, but she possessed a sense of adventure, love, and family. And that rendered her story unique. Audiences appreciated the performance because it served as a reminder them of what truly matters, such as family, compassion, and perseverance, even when life becomes challenging. Laura was portrayed by the juvenile actress Melissa Gilbert. She was approximately 10 years old at the moment she commenced her performance in the role. And the truth is, individuals who observed her development on screen appeared to have an understanding of her. Each week, they observed her laugh, cry, and acquire insights about life. As she proceeds as she aged, the program allowed her character to develop as well. Laura began attending school and providing assistance within the household environment, and ultimately developed a romantic affection. Now, this is where the situation begins to become quite engaging. Actor Dean Butler joined the series as Almanzo Wilder. He was the individual whom Laura fell in love with. The instant Dean appeared on the screen, fans immediately observed something noteworthy. He possessed this. He possesses a composed, benevolent, and commanding presence, reminiscent of someone trustworthy. And when I first met Almanzo, it was as if you could sense the instant her heart skipped a beat. Defeat. That is how authentic their connection appeared. Individuals merely observed Laura and Almanzo's collapse in love, they held that belief. Their chemistry appeared so genuine and authentic that admirers began to inquire if they genuinely shared affection beyond the screen as well. The wedding sequences and his manner of gazing she appeared so genuine, and one might have believed it was more than mere performance. All parties were convinced there was some activity occurring behind the camera. Combined with the reality that those periods were when celebrities were not prominent on social media, they rarely shared anything online. There were no instances, Instagram stories, or behind-the-scenes footage to satiate our curiosity. There were simply episodes and several interviews published in publications. That enigma rendered everything even more enchanting. Individuals I anticipated that Melissa and Dean were secretly involved romantically. Meanwhile, Melissa and Dean did not engage in meaningful conversation regarding their relationship throughout the performance. For many years, they remained silent. They did not verify or confirm, refuse all requests. It was as if they left everything entirely to our imagination. And surprisingly, it was successful. Because followers' imaginations exceeded all bounds. Behind the tender romance sequences, no one is aware of what truly transpires. Proceeding forward. Were they close acquaintances? Did they harbor emotions for one another? Or was it simply all along as the performance of a high standard? Fans have been left to speculate for decades. Nevertheless, the romantic narrative of Laura and Almanzo became a significant component of the program. It imparted a sense of vitality to the series. It instilled hope in the supporters. And it rendered Melissa Gilbert and Dean Butler household names. Individuals engaged not merely to observe pastoral life, while also witnessing the blossoming of that romance. However, at times, what we observe on television does not accurately reflect reality, and over time, the inquiries persisted without cease. What was transpiring between Melissa and Dean behind the scenes? Why did they never open up? What are your thoughts regarding this matter? And above all, what was the fundamental truth? After a prolonged period of silence, Melissa is now prepared to communicate. But prior to delving into the truth regarding her and Dean, I need to return. Because Melissa Gilbert's voyage did not commence on the prairie. Her existence before Little House on the Prairie was filled with numerous twists and turns. She was not raised in a farm, and she did not originate from a modest existence comparable to that of Laura Ingalls. Her narrative is entirely distinct. Her journey to achieving prominence as a television personality commenced considerably earlier and was not without its challenges. Now, let us momentarily turn away from the prairie fields and observe the young female behind the famous braids and sunbonnet that we fell in love with, because comprehending her shed a wholly fresh perspective on her association with Dean Butler. From an ordinary girl to a prairie star before Melissa Gilbert achieved widespread recognition or became known as the girl with the iconic tresses, she was merely a young girl born on May 8, 1964, in Los Angeles, California. She was formally adopted by the actor and comedian Paul Gilbert and his wife, Barbara Crane, a performer and actress, just a day after she was born. From that moment onward, Melissa became a member of a show business family, though circumstances were not always seamless. Although she was raised by caring parents, her early childhood was nonetheless characterized by considerable strain and uncertainty, particularly regarding her role within a family of performers. Paul Gilbert, her adoptive father, was affable and humorous. He frequently accompanied Melissa for auditions and performances. She observed cameras, lights, and actors from a very tender age. This rendered the world of television as familiar to her, as if it were simply an integral aspect of ordinary life. Furthermore, although she had not yet achieved full understanding, she was already on her journey toward renown. By the age of 7, she was already participating in commercial advertisements. Her innate charisma rendered her distinguish herself. She was not an outspoken or ostentatious child, she was simply genuine. Casting agents highly appreciated her talents, expressive irises, and her capacity to deliver lines effortlessly. It was not long before she secured her initial television appearances. She participated in several commercials and minor roles, sufficient to gain observed. Then, at the age of 9, Melissa attended an audition that profoundly altered the course of her life. She auditioned for the role of Laura Ingalls, the courageous and inquisitive child from Little House on the Prairie. The producers were seeking someone exceptional. Not merely an individual capable of performing, but an individual capable of embodying the essence of the program. What finalized the agreement was her screen test with the show's protagonist and producer, Michael Landon. Michael was not merely the primary leader individual appearing on the program. He portrayed Charles Ingalls, Laura's compassionate and diligent father. However, off-screen, he held even greater significance for Melissa. From the initial day of their acquaintance, Michael became a paternal figure to her. He perceived something in her that others did not. He provided her guidance and protection. Her and regarded her as a member of the family. Melissa later stated that Michael assumed the role of a father in her lifetime, particularly following the divorce of her adoptive parents, and her subsequent relationship became estranged from her biological father. Nevertheless, their connection did not cease when the cameras were deactivated. Michael embraced Melissa into his genuine family. She dedicated time spent with his children, particularly his daughter Leslie. They engaged in sleepovers and shared secrets, and developed a sisterly bond. To Melissa, the Landon household was regarded as a secondary residence, a site where she experienced a sense of being valued and embraced. And for a young girl in Hollywood, that represented everything. Melissa's real existence was not always straightforward. Her parents' marriage ultimately concluded, and she grappled with the sensation of being caught between two worlds, the glamorous existence of a child star and the subtle, perplexing emotions of a young girl striving to comprehend her identity. However, Michael was consistently present. When she sought guidance, when she was disoriented, when she experienced uncertainty regarding her, he was merely a phone call away for the future. That type of relationship left an enduring impression on Melissa. Even years later, she regards Michael as one of the most significant persons in her life. His conviction in she provided her with the fortitude to believe in herself. That location became her second residence. She possessed robust friendships with her co-stars, such as Allison Arngrim, who portrayed Nellie Olson, and spent numerous years sharing moments of joy and education with them. These connections contributed to her development, both professionally and personally, as an actress and as an individual. By the time she reached her teenage years, Melissa had already spent several years working on Little House on the Prairie. She had portrayed emotionally charged scenes, addressed challenging subjects, and upheld the integrity of the show through significant narrative arcs. She had acquired the skills to navigate renown and handle criticism effectively, and methods to ensure she remains grounded. However, the most significant transformation occurred when the program presented a new character, Almanzo Wilder. Melissa was maturing, just as Laura was. It was a time for her character to encounter her first passion, and with it, the arrival of Dean Butler. As Dean entered the set, the entire atmosphere transformed. Their personas, Laura and Almanzo, evolved into the most cherished couple of the program. The chemistry was evident, and viewers could not help but become captivated. Affection for their narrative. However, behind the scenes, Melissa was still endeavoring to determine what it intended to portray a romantic relationship and what it signified when individuals began questioning the authenticity of the romance. What understanding of affection did Melissa possess at that age? Was she exhibiting genuine emotion or merely acting? And in what manner does feigning love alter her permanently? The challenges underlying the romantic scenes. The world observed a charming, courageous, wide-eyed young girl with two tresses, traversing open fields. Accelerated movement in slow motion. However, in actuality, Melissa was merely a young girl maturing before the eyes of millions, and it was not always straightforward. Initially, it was enjoyable, as she was only 9 years old when she first entered Laura's footwear. Everything appeared to be an illusion. She had the opportunity to don enjoyable costumes, ride horses, and engage in play on a location that resembled a different era. However, as the seasons progressed and Melissa matured, an internal transformation commenced within her. The role that once appeared enchanting began to feel burdensome. While other children attended school and socialized with peers after class, Melissa dedicated extensive hours on the production. She was required to memorize numerous pages of lines, adhere to instructions provided by adults, and repeatedly delivering emotionally charged performances. It may have appeared entertaining on television, but the reality was that being a child actor entailed considerable strain. What compounded the difficulty was that Melissa was required to maintain perfection at all times, at least in the perception of the public. Individuals perceived her as Laura. Unknown individuals would approach her and anticipate her to behave precisely like the kind girl from the program. However, she was not Ms. Laura. She was simply an ordinary adolescent endeavoring to mature. And in some manner, this actuality started to perplex her. As she entered her teenage years, Melissa began to contemplate queries such as, "Who am I? May I inquire? Where does Laura conclude, and where do I commence?" It was challenging. Everyone in her vicinity was treating her as the character, rather than the individual behind the tresses and bonnet. It was challenging to grow up under public scrutiny. And it was even more challenging to determine her true identity, when the entire universe believed they already understood. The matter did not conclude there. Upon Dean's introduction as a new character introduced into the program to serve as her love interest and subsequently become her husband, it was extremely awkward and profoundly uneasy for her behind the scenes. She remained a juvenile. She had not yet had a genuine romantic partner, and now she was expected to demonstrate romantic interest. Expression of devotion on screen. She subsequently acknowledged that filming those sequences with Dean was a stressful experience and unusual. However, Dean maintained a professional demeanor and was courteous. However, this did not simplify the situation for a 15-year-old girl who was just beginning to understand her emotions. The pressure did not cease at that point. The supporters became unfeasible due to their incessant inquiries regarding whether they were genuinely together in real life. For Melissa, embodying that romance appeared as if stepping into another person's existence. She intended to ensure its proper functionality. She aimed to please the followers. However, internally, she occasionally experienced a sense of being adrift. She was learning how to evoke affection in a woman while she was still a girl discovering the meaning of love even intended. And this role was accompanied by considerable emotional turmoil. There existed certain expectations. She was required to beam and appear attractive in each scene. She also required the persuasion of millions of viewers that this mature love story was coherent, even if she was not entirely prepared. Therefore, while everyone rejoiced for Laura and Almanzo's romance, Melissa was occupied with her personal affairs. A universe abundant of stress, ambiguity, and an exploration of self-identity. Furthermore, Melissa encountered difficulties with while working on Little House on the Prairie. I encountered a condition known as misophonia. This indicates a tiny size. It appears that gnawing or tapping distresses her significantly and causes her to feel irritated or uneasy, even if they went unnoticed by others. At that time, the condition had not yet been formally diagnosed medically, so she was unable to articulate a term for the emotion she was experiencing. Subsequently, she discussed her experience during an interview with People magazine. What occurred once the cameras were deactivated? What did Melissa experience this when no one was observing? Melissa's challenge with the standard of beauty in Hollywood. Melissa secured a principal role in the 1981 adaptation of Splendor in the Grass, and everything appeared to be a novel and invigorating progression in her acting career professional trajectory. However, this role was accompanied by conditions that undermined her confidence and self-esteem. The producers and the wardrobe team maintained very strict notions regarding her appearance on screen. Departed was the unpretentious, wholesome appearance of Laura Ingalls. Instead, Melissa was anticipated to undergo a transformation into an elegant, alluring young woman, one who exemplifies the classic Hollywood standard of attractiveness. She recollects that the apparel selections initially appeared peculiar and caused discomfort. The garments were form-fitting and provocative, markedly different from the modest prairie dresses she was accustomed to wearing in Little House. Every detail was significant, from the length of her skirts to the design of her clothing, the blouses, and the manner in which her hair was styled. The studio wished for Melissa to resemble the quintessential Hollywood icon. Starlet, an individual capable of captivating audiences not only through her acting but also through her appearance. This sudden emphasis on her appearance was not solely related to costumes. The public and media promptly observed her new style drew close scrutiny from Melissa. Supporters and evaluators began to comment on her physique, facial features, and overall appearance. It was not always considerate. Some individuals criticized her severely for her change from the damsel they had admired on television. The burden to maintain that glamorous image only increased in intensity. At only 18 years of age and confronted with these expectations, Melissa made a decision that many young individuals might not consider. Actresses in Hollywood often find themselves undergoing plastic surgery. She chose to pursue such procedures. She experienced a rhinoplasty performed shortly after her 18th birthday. According to her memoir Prairie Tale, in her own words, she characterized the surgery as a not significant matter, but the actuality proved to be considerably more challenging. Following the procedure, she encountered severe pain and distress. She stated, "I emerged from the procedure with significant pain in my face. They packed my nostril with substantial strips of gauze soaked in liquid substances to alleviate the discomfort. The surgery marked only the commencement of a challenging process." Recovery procedure. Complications necessitated her undergoing 2 additional surgeries to address the resulting issues. by the initial one. It was a challenging experience, both physically and emotionally. However, that was not the only modifications implemented by Melissa. Over the years, she also made the decision to undergo breast augmentation. The beauty standards of the Hollywood industry cast a substantial influence, and Melissa felt torn between her desires to experience confidence and the expectation to present oneself in a specific manner. It was not solely a matter of vanity, it concerned survival within an industry that frequently evaluates women primarily based on their appearance. However, after years of implementing these changes, Melissa made a decisive and candid choice. In 2015, she underwent the removal of her breast implants and ceased dyeing her hair red. Engaging with Individuals magazine, she described this decision as one of the most prudent actions she has ever taken. For her, removing the implants were intended to reclaim control over her own body and health. It represented a pivotal moment, shifting focus from conforming to Hollywood standards and fully honoring her authentic self. She has assumed the position expressing concern regarding the unrealistic beauty standards imposed on women within the entertainment industry. In the course of this analysis, a sincere interview with Prevention magazine, in which she conveyed her frustration with expressions such as anti-aging, he states, is a myth. It is offensive and disrespectful. The process of aging a privilege rather than a burden. She further remarked, I am aging with gratitude. I wish to observe each line, each mark, is an integral part of my identity. This new perspective demonstrates the extent of Melissa's growth. Has arrived. From a youthful actress modifying her appearance to meet Hollywood's expectations, she now advocates for natural aging and self-acceptance. She advises others against pursuing the unattainable ideals, but to accept themselves as they are. Behind Melissa's new beginning, one name remains lingering, Dean Butler. What is their current narrative? What was the ultimate revelation she disclosed? Remain with us as we explore further. The reality of her relationship with Dean Butler. Melissa has never been one to avoid the truth. In her memoir Prairie, she reveals the tea that enthusiasts have long anticipated hearing for decades. She acknowledges, I was 15, and he was 23. I appeared to resemble a male. I was constructed with a physique similar to that of an adolescent. I was a young lady. And I was compelled to simulate developing romantic feelings for a mature male. That is not quite the romantic ideal on television that people typically envision. She was a juvenile, still uncomfortable in her own skin, and now being requested to perform a kiss on camera with a man nearly a decade her senior. Let us not forget that their very first kiss was broadcast on national television. There was no occurrence preliminary activity, lacking practical application in real-world chemistry. Only lighting, a camera, and a script that required her to appear enchanted. Melissa stated in her memoir that she was indeed terrified, and the kiss felt awkward and odd. She felt as though she were a child masquerading as an adult woman. And Dean was also aware of it. During the interviews, he acknowledged feeling the age disparity and made a concerted effort to maintain respectfulness and professionalism. However, this is the crucial point. Melissa disclosed that she had an actual romantic attraction to another individual. And it was not Dean. At that time, her affections were with Rob Lowe, the teenage heartthrob whom she subsequently dated in a serious manner. Dean, by contrast, was more akin to a supportive colleague. She clarified that she is never romantic. Dean was akin to an elder sibling. Nonetheless, the scripts remained unaffected. Week after week, she was compelled to gaze into Dean's eyes and feign that he was her true soulmate. And the followers accepted every moment of it as truth. Behind the scenes, it was neither animosity nor affection as we all anticipated it, it was primarily a gesture of respect. Dean was calm, composed, and consistently exhibited patience. Melissa stated he never once overstepped boundaries or caused her to feel uneasy. She expressed her gratitude for his considerate demeanor and the manner in which he regarded her as a fellow human being, not merely a co-star. They were merely two individuals attempting to accomplish their task, and the world became engrossed in it. Over time, their on-screen presence romance emerged as one of the most iconic love storylines in television history. Laura and Almanzo possessed hashtag couple goals predating the existence of hashtags. Supporters composed correspondence, imploring for additional scenes, additional affections, additional everything. However, in reality, Melissa remained merely a teenage female. Navigating fame, social discomfort, and the emotional tumult of experiencing adolescence in the public eye. In an interview with CBS, she stated, "There was no spark between us." It was not the case. And while that may disappoint some, but it also enhances the recognition of their on-screen achievements as even more remarkable. That was not synergy, it was merely theatrical performance. Dean Butler also presented his perspective in interviews and his publication Prairie Man. He stated, "We were required to establish a convincing romantic relationship, and Melissa facilitated the process with ease. She was attentive, gifted, and courageous." He understood that the age difference made things prove challenging, and he approached his role with utmost seriousness, not solely as Almanzo but also as a guardian for Melissa. He even acknowledged the influence exerted by the network and viewers to ensure it appeared seamless. Natural was profoundly impactful. But he and Melissa crafted a remarkable connection even in the absence of genuine romance. Even after the conclusion of the program, individuals continued to discuss Melissa and Dean. Some reflections perhaps they were genuinely in love in real life and merely attempting to conceal it. There was a large number of speculations. Individuals posed inquiries during interviews, anticipating the revelation of a significant secret. However, Melissa consistently conveyed that the veracity. "We were never more than co-stars," she stated in an interview with Entertainment Weekly. It was functioning. Exceptional performance. Nevertheless, their narrative possesses a distinctive form of tenderness. At the moment when Melissa celebrated her 50th birthday in 2014, and she and Dean reunited for a television segment, the connection persisted, yet this time it revolved solely around recollections. They smiled, embraced, and reminisced about the past when they were regarded as everyone's preferred television couple. Not at this time. Because their actions suggested genuine affection, even if they did not explicitly express it. During the interviews, Melissa has also considered the significant influence Dean had in shaping that period of her life. She stated, "He served as a steady presence throughout a particularly tumultuous period. And I shall forever remain thankful for that." That is not a passionate love story, yet it embodies something more profound, a genuine friendship that has endured the test of time, uncomfortable moments, and public conjecture. Now that Melissa has ultimately spoken out, fans can be assured that the truth is clear: there was no concealed romance, no sensational scandal, and no romantic involvement. In a private setting. But what they possessed remains sufficiently rare and exquisite: two individuals who united. As unfamiliar individuals transformed into screen legends and departed with something even greater than love, a connection forged based on trust, compassion, and many years of collective experience. Life following Little House and contemporary legacies. When Little House on the Prairie ultimately concluded, it was not merely a television series coming to an end. It was more akin to the conclusion of Melissa's upbringing. The performers and crew were akin to a family to her. She had spent nearly a decade in Walnut Grove, growing up before the eyes of millions. However, presently, the cameras were deactivated, and reality awaited. For the majority of minor celebrities, that is when circumstances begin to disintegrate. However, the situation was different with Melissa. Although it was not without difficulty. She encountered difficulties in identifying roles that enabled her to transcend her Laura Ingalls image. Individuals continued to perceive her in pigtails, traversing expansive wheat fields. She aspired to achieve greater accomplishments, expand her capabilities, and further develop her talents. As an authentic woman. However, Hollywood has not always been accommodating to young women seeking to reinvent themselves. Particularly if they initially gained fame as young actors. Nevertheless, Melissa did not surrender. She assumed various positions in television films and theatrical productions. One of her most notable performances occurred in Choices of the Heart and subsequently in Babylon 5, where she portrayed more formidable and sinister characters. She also engaged in voice acting and even achieved recognition on Broadway. She exerted considerable effort, determined not to dissolve into obscurity. However, her existence outside of the public eye was not without difficulties. She experienced highly publicized relationships, including a prolonged romantic relationship with Rob Lowe and a marriage to actor Bo Brinkman. That relationship provided her with a son, Dakota, but the marriage ended in divorce. Subsequently, she married Bruce Boxleitner, another actor, and they had a blended family. That marriage also concluded, but it provided Melissa with 2 additional stepsons and years of life experience she would later document. Melissa was unafraid to disclose her challenges. In her memoir Prairie Tale, she candidly addressed all aspects: addiction, self-doubt, and fractured hearts and the relentless pressure to achieve perfection. She acknowledged experiencing difficulties with alcohol, addressing unsuccessful plastic surgeries, and experiencing a sense of disorientation in her own life. She expressed, "There were moments when I no longer recognized myself." However, rather than conceal these feelings, she chose to openly share them. That sincerity further endeared her to her admirers. She also faced health challenges. In her 40s, she experienced neck and spinal issues and underwent surgery following an accident on Dancing with the Stars. But despite the agony, she persisted. In 2016, she once again garnered attention, this time in the realm of politics. Melissa contested for Congress in Michigan's 8th District. Although she ultimately withdrew due to health concerns, the campaign revealed a different aspect of her, a determined advocate for change. Then, a pivotal moment occurred. In 2013, she encountered the actor Timothy Busfield. This time, the situation felt they married discreetly, relocated to a modest residence in the Catskills, and commenced a more measured pace. More tranquil existence. "I desired to return to something uncomplicated," Melissa stated. And she was sincere. Together, they cultivate vegetables, rear chickens, and frequently exist without Wi-Fi. She abandoned the pressure to maintain a youthful appearance or achieve a Hollywood-perfect look. She had her breast implants removed and she has permanently abstained from cosmetic surgery. "I am embracing my true self," she shared with People. "This is my visage. This is who I am." It was a compelling message, particularly within an industry that frequently compels women to eliminate every wrinkle and imperfection. In recent years, she has revisited her origins, not only as an actress but also as an author and storyteller. Her 2022 memoir, Back to the Prairie, elaborates on her relocating to the countryside and the subsequent rehabilitation it facilitated. Fans appreciated this transformation. She discussed the process of rebuilding a dilapidated residence enduring severe winter conditions and adapting to a life of reduced circumstances. The narrative was not ostentatious. It was authentic. And that is precisely why people resonated with it. She also discovered new methods to effect change. Melissa commenced openly addressing issues related to mental health, body image, and aging. She aimed to inform young women that they need not pursue perfection, as pleasure could be discovered in the soil beneath your fingernails and tranquility within your soul. Today, Melissa Gilbert is more than just Laura Ingalls. She is a mother, a wife, a writer, and an individual who communicates honestly. In a world saturated with false narratives, she was raised openly before the cameras and proceeded to go through challenging periods. She recovered herself and opted to live with integrity rather than pursue fame. It's not only the reruns of Little House on the Prairie that continue to broadcast on television daily. It is not merely the affection that admirers have for Laura and Almanzo. Her true legacy is a life that was not without imperfections but was genuinely lived with courage, compassion, and resilience. She demonstrates to us that even if one's existence begins on a television set, the true events occur following the conclusion of the program. What are your thoughts on Melissa's comments? Please share your thoughts in the comments section. If you found today's video enjoyable, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. If you desire additional engaging videos like this, please click on the video displayed on your screen.